These robots in disguise have been on our shelves and on our television screens or comics in some form of media ever since 1984. And for those of us who have been following the franchise for a long period of time, we have a certain collecting style, a certain collecting pattern, certain ways that we sort of be a fan of the franchise. But if you've taken a long break from Transformers from your childhood, or you're just getting back into it right now, it can be something of a daunting task. Hence the discussion topic of this video in terms of where to start, where to go next. And I brought in a few friends who I'm going to bring on camera here very shortly. But before that, hi once again, everyone. My name's Ken, and this is a Toy Connections online live stream, or TKO, broadcasting to you whatever part of the globe you happen to be in and whatever time of day it happens to be. So, all right, where to begin dissecting such a topic? Now, I couldn't do this by myself. So I decided, like I said earlier, I brought a few guys on camera, and all of these individuals, you'll probably, if you've been following the TKO streams or you're in the premieres of my other videos, you'll probably recognize some of these names. So I'm going to just slowly bring them in one by one. This particular individual is very, very passionate about just toys in general. And we were talking about it right up until the minutes leading up until this particular episode. He's got a YouTube channel as well. You can follow him there. The description is in the link below. And you can also follow him on Instagram. This is Will McLaughlin.
Hi.
How's
it going, everyone? Hi, Ken. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yep, and of course, the first thing everybody does is they look away from Ken's display shelves and directly to the Ironhide and Cliff Jumper behind you, and that's totally okay. That's why you're here. All right, hey, great to have you on, Will. And this other individual here has a pretty big presence on Instagram in terms of photography, very knowledgeable about toys, very humble in his nature, but willing to share information when asked and given the opportunity. Mark Bobahicks, welcome to TKO.
Hi, guys.
Hey, buddy. So another person with a good display back there. What time is it over there overseas?
It's 5:05 in the evening, so yeah.
So you're in the wee hours. You're well deep into the afternoon, and here I am sipping a coffee. Yes. So I will apologize / not apologize. It will be at least 2 bathroom breaks over here, but that's why this third person on the panel who I don't have a soapbox big enough for this other guy that I'm about to bring on, but we call him the excellence of eloquation. Always good for a conversation, and just my personal name for him is Sir Hans Chow of the Kensguard. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, morning, man. How you going?
And that wasn't a Freudian slip. That was completely intentional. It was Kensguard, not Kingsguard. For those of you who were fans of Game of Thrones, and for those of you who thought that was really awkward, it's because you haven't seen the series nor its follow-up House of the Dragon yet.
True. So first of my name.
First of his name. I think you were asking me the other day, how do you get promoted from Sir to Lord? And I had no idea. I just thought that with the voice and the way you carry yourself, I just had you as a knight of the Kingsguard or Kensguard right away. I don't know why I gave you that title. It just felt right.
Being a lord is boring. You don't get to do enough fighting anyway. So it's better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll promote you to Lord Commander of the Kensguard right about now.
Once I get to fight, I'm fine.
Again, if you're not a Game of Thrones fan, you might not understand these references, but at least those of you on screen are laughing. So let's see who's in the chat and say a quick hello. Will is pulling double duty, being on screen and in the chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Bjorn, good to see you. Jordan, formerly known as Anonymous Dude 123, good to see you. Gojatron, we'll find a way to get you on the stream at some point in time. I know you work every other weekend, so thank you for being able to tune in and listen to us. We got Bob Squad in the house. We got Nolan as usual, one of the most loyal people I can count on to be in the chat, and Grindhead Jim of not just the Grindhead Jim channel, but also of the Resurrection Toys toy line. So give him a follow and check him out from there as well. We got, and of course the chat has jumped on me, so give me a second. Brick Something says he loves coming to learn about toys that weren't necessarily his jam, but loved them from afar. Had a few in his time, and maybe after this stream, he'll have a few more. We'll see what happens. Rolando Flores, good to see you. And I think we are basically caught up. Hans Chow was in the chat just in case his microphone stopped working. We needed to be able to hear him somehow. So Wow. Okay, gentlemen, what a topic to unpack. And gosh, normally I show up with a bunch of notes, and I'm going to show you what my note sheet looks like today. If there's nothing on that piece of paper, it's because I literally have no notes. I copied and pasted the list of panel questions in our private chat. I was just feeling lazy and even had to make up that introduction on the fly this morning. I hit the live function and I was like, crap, I have no idea what I'm going to say when I get on camera. And I saw the thing counting down, and I saw, because normally I do these like elaborate red carpet entrances for each of my guests. Today I didn't come prepped at all because had my coffee late and everything. But we're here to talk about Transformers, not about Ken's lack of preparation habits. So, gentlemen, such a daunting subject because, like I said in the introduction, these have been on store shelves, at least in some part of the world, in a mainstream fashion every year for almost 4 decades now. And there's so many options for collecting. Like, what I'd like to ask from each of you is, where would you start if someone was to ask you for a recommendation? What do I do? Like, if someone wanted to start, let's say in the StreamYard's backwards, but I think my modern figures are here. If someone was like, okay, I don't want to get into G1, I want to get into modern, kind of like Star Wars Black Series or G.I. Joe Classified, Motu Origins, what's the Transformers recommendation for doing kind of the same thing? Will, I got you clockwise. Let's start with you.
Well, that's a really good question. First of all, I'm shocked, Ken, because I thought you rattled everything off the top of your head. I never knew you prepared anything in the past, so I'm shocked that this happened here. But it's a really good question because, just like Robots in Disguise, I've come into this stream in disguise because I am a re-emerging collector of Transformers products. So I'm that guy. I'm the guy who's asking the questions. So where do you start? So in my research, obviously G1 stuff is the stuff from when I was a kid. It's the stuff I remember, and even though it has its own little quirks and flaws, the thing I've seen on store shelves that has kind of drawn me back in, pulling me back in, is the newer ones. And I'm not really sure what they're called. I may mess up because I know there's all these classifications, and I always get them wrong. But they're really going deep into the Transformers movie. They're making all the products. I'm seeing them on the shelves, and that's what's bringing me back in. I've also noticed that the newer ones are kind of they've corrected the scale, I guess. So they're all pretty much in the same scale. They've added articulation, and like I said, they're really going. I saw a Megatron on the store shelf yesterday or the day before, where Unicron is converting him into Galvatron, and he's got that grid work painted on him and everything. And as cool as that was, I didn't buy it. I think it was like $24, but that's what draws me back in. But my kids never played with the G1 stuff. They like the stuff from the early 2000s because that's what they liked when they were kids. So, my boys are looking for those toys. And, that's a totally different thing there as well. So some people also love the movies. The movies, I like the 87 movie. Or 86. That's my jam. But so I'd say, start where you have a connection.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I think the early 2000s, that was like the Armada series, Energon, maybe Robots in Disguise series if you started back in 2001 or so, or maybe Beast Machines.
This is one of my boys from when he was a kid.
Oh, that's the Classics 2006 Megatron.
Yeah.
That was kind of like at the start of the modern era. Like, I consider that like when G.I. Joe Classified was in the middle of their like sci-fi phase with the weird weapons. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like what Transformers was doing in Classics in 2006. Mind you, it was 2006 and our toy standards hadn't evolved to the same level today. So that wasn't met with as much criticism as that was.
They love those. I can't stand this one because I spent, so much time transforming him over and over again as a kid. Or when they were kids, because he'd bring it to me every 5 minutes. Dad, transform this. So
mine was doing that to me yesterday. So yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Bobahicks, what about you? Why don't you weigh in on this subject? Where to start?
Well, I suppose the good news is if you are a G1 fan, then you've kind of got the lion's share of product to choose from if you're going modern, because they've drawn the most from G1 so far. If you're a little bit younger, like Will was mentioning about his kids, and say my nephews, they would have been those kind of 2000s kids that liked Armada or Energon, or maybe even go back a little bit further, people who maybe G2 was their first kind of jumping off point. You're not as well represented if those are your kind of fan, if those are your jam that you're into. So if you're a G1 fan, you've got a lot of modern product you can choose from, whether that be mainline or third party. But younger, if you're skewing a bit younger and you're not as into G1, or maybe you're more, I suppose if you're into the live action movies as well, actually you've got a good jumping off point with the modern line. You've got the studio series for the live action films, which is pretty affordable. So yeah, the G1 fans and the live action movie fans, I think, have the best choice of product out there. And I suppose for G1, if you're talking modern, you're talking about the War for Cybertron trilogy and all the lines that have come out since then, those kind of heavily inspired G1 lines. Still relatively affordable, as compared to other things you could buy, the price is always creeping up. But yeah, that's where I'd be starting from, is War for Cybertron. If I'm going modern and I'm a G1 fan, that's where I'm jumping in.
Totally fair. I got a lot to unpack on that topic as well. But Gojatron says here that Generations is his best modern line for selection and modern engineering, but choosing one version of the characters as there's multiples available, that's kind of one of the conundrums. And I think War for Cybertron is kind of going through that same, or was kind of going through that same thing. I think they ended in 2021. So always that same conundrum. Hans, take her away, buddy.
So the first thing I would do is I would go online and I would find all the most valuable figures, and I would buy as many of them as I could in box and loose, and then put them in my cupboard, never displaying them, keeping them sheltered and away from real fans and real collectors for years. Then I would go on all the forums and then artificially inflate the price by typing in how much these figures are worth. And then in 10 years' time, you put them all up on eBay for 3 and 4 times as much. And then you buy yourself that Lamborghini that you've been looking at and snatch up all the chicks too. Anyway. On a real though, what I would probably do, your first starting point should really be, how much do you want to spend on this thing? Seriously. Because as Wilhelm and Bobahicks both said, if with $100 you can get 4 or 5 decent figures or a couple core figures if you're going for the newer lines. For G1 fans, there's the Earthrise series. I think that's really when they got away from the Cybertronian modes and they kind of went back into the Earth-styled transformation modes. But if you are a more high-end collector, more into display, and you're willing to chuck out a little bit extra money, the Masterpiece line and the third-party lines do provide some excellent opportunities to, get your hands really dirty. And also because the transformations are a lot more complex, because these things are really not meant to be for kids. You get a much more accurate representation of what you may have grown up with as a child. Now, if you're like me and you do play with your toys and stuff like that, and you are interested in G1, this is like some prime time to get in there, because Earthrise go all the way up there, revisiting nostalgia in a very heavy way. And as Bobahicks said, it's still very affordable to get into those things. But if you're just a savage, you can go with what I said when we started and just make an investment, But my collection, I suppose the one piece of advice I could really give, and this stands for everything, is just if you buy one and then they bring out one later that catches your fancy, get rid of the old one. Because space is a scene, so is finances. So always be smart with these things. It's better to have a lean, clean, mean collection than a large bloated one where you have to write binders and binders of catalog, because it's supposed to be fun. And unless you catch your kicks keeping records, be kind to yourself.
I'm guilty of having too many extra catalogs, except that you would go as far as to put them in binders. There's a bin over there that just has a bunch of catalogs completely unsorted that I just keep piling up along with the extra accessories. I mean, it's true that when you're trying to jump in, when someone says, Ken, where do I start with Transformers? The first thing I do is I ask them what else they're collecting. Now, most of the time they will say something to the effect of, like I alluded to earlier, Star Wars Black Series, Motu Origins, G.I. Joe Classified. And my question then becomes, are you trying to collect the equivalent of that? Now, on the extremely rare occasion, someone will say, I collect Hot Toys. Then I just say, go get the Masterpiece stuff or the third party stuff, because you clearly have, like if that's your level of collecting, then that's where you jump. But like Hans said, with Transformers, Earthrise is really where they hit the ground running with the Earth modes. And I typically recommend Earthrise and Kingdom as well, because they came after each other because it's really weird, because Transformers have been around so long, they have a sub-branding and a sub-branding, right? There's Transformers, which is the main branding, War for Cybertron, which is the sub-branding, and then within War for Cybertron, you've got Siege, Earthrise, and Kingdom. And usually I tell people to anchor themselves there. And with Siege, I understand that it's mostly Cybertronian modes, but depending on the character, like Springer, he was never re-released in the following 2 years, and his alt mode is close enough to the Earth mode that I say, in a case of a character like Springer, or a character like Astro Train, who was given the same mode when he came out in Earthrise, I just tell them, you can get the Siege ones as well, but always look at the alternate mode. Then it's hard to once I anchor the people there, I'll typically say, once War for Cybertron ended, they started the Legacy series. So you can continue there as the continuation of War for Cybertron. And then the Studio series was when they were releasing the movie line of the Michael Bay style, but then they did a sub-brand there called Studio Series 86, which complements all those. And if I haven't lost their interest by then, and if they haven't completely zoned me out, I keep going under that line of advice. Now, it's confusing because the modern line started all the way back in 2006, like what Will held up with that classics style Megatron. And usually what I tell people is, if you're just coming in, I wouldn't go all the way back to 2006 or the Generations line that Gojatron represented, unless you want something that looks different, like the equivalent of the first couple of waves of Classified. That's kind of what the Classics and Generations was trying to do to some extent. And if that's what you want, then I go that recommendation route, like Gojatron and what Will showed. But that's why I said it's really hard to unpack. You basically you find the figure you like, you anchor yourself there, and you try to build and complement around that. And eventually you realize it doesn't matter what the name of the sub-brand is, as long as they all fit together and reasonably scale well, that's where you go. And unfortunately, that was as short and concise as I could make it in terms of where to start in the collecting game. And I ran out of breath saying that. So if somebody wants to start rapping just to kill some airtime, just go ahead.
I think
it's tough though. Like, it is tough to, like, where do you start really? And of course, as Hans kind of alluded to as well, space. Nothing takes up as much space as a Transformers collection. No, they're big and beefy in robot mode. They're big and beefy in old mode. You can't win with them. They're going to either take up a lot of horizontal space or vertical space. So I'd probably add that on as advice as well. Apart from the price or the cost, do you actually have the physical space to house these robots?
I would argue that the Lamborghini I bought with all that scalping money takes up all space. Anyway.
Yeah. So kind of transitioning on the same note, the way we kind of dissected that first question was with regards to the modern game. And that's why I did the analogy to the other toy lines. And sorry, I keep saying Motu Origins. I should give some shout out to Masterverse and Classics as well, because some people are into that. And to also make sure that they don't confuse the Armada series we were talking earlier or Energon. Those are like what I call the Motu CGI, if that makes sense. Because it's kind of a new continuity with a revised version of the same characters. Again, very hard. It's easy in your mind when you've been following it, but very hard to dissect backwards to somebody else. When it comes to the vintage game, because some people they collect toys, but they prefer the vintage. They don't necessarily jump to the modern. Would you still recommend them, or do you find they become fragile, or do you think they've been superseded and kind of overlapped by the modern versions of the same characters? Will, why don't you weigh in on that first?
Well, I'd say that really depends, on why you're collecting. So if you're collecting toys to play with, yeah, I would avoid them because even most of my Transformers I had when I was a kid broke. They were always fragile. Their joints, you twist it the wrong way. I've got one snapped off at the waist. I've got arms missing, all kinds of things. They kind of corrected that in the future with better engineering and then parts that kind of come off rather than snap off, where you can put them back together. So if you want to play, probably not the best recommendation. But if you want stuff to put on your shelf that you're doing for nostalgia, then I think that's great, because as flawed as some people may say that the original Transformers were, they were a groundbreaking toy. They were like nothing else other than competitors at the time, but they did have a unique place, in our hearts when we were kids and as adults now. So I'd say it depends on where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Bobahicks, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, it is. It's really, if you have the itch, you're going to want to scratch that itch. And I think for me personally, I wanted a lot of the old G1 toys just because I missed out on a good few of them growing up. I was a little bit late to the game. It was kind of early 90s when I got into Transformers, and a lot of the characters I was watching on TV just weren't actually on the shelves anymore, and I only knew about the toys because older kids down the street had them. That's how I got to play with a lot of them. So I always had a real itch to pick up the G1 toys. Now, as far as the fragility and the durability, yeah, they might as well be made of glass. They're part of the reason I have cabinets, is just to make sure nothing happens to them. Look, I like to go out and take photos of my toys. You'll rarely see me bring any G1 toys outside, because that is, that's taking a major risk. So yeah, nice as display pieces, and if you have that nostalgia for them, brilliant. You probably will think it's worth it. But otherwise, if you're looking for a nice representation of the character, you're probably better off going with something modern, and it would probably be more affordable as well, because the prices of some of the G1 stuff at the moment is going crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Hans?
I agree with these fine gentlemen to my left. The left and
diagonal.
Yeah. I think the G1 stuff is it's a tough sell, because if I could compare them to their G.I. Joe has maintained its playability regardless of its age for some reason. Like, I still feel like I could take a vintage Havoc and hit my kid over the head with it and they'd survive. They're tough toys, Transformers didn't have that. They always felt a little wonky. They kind of fixed that as they moved on, but until you hit in my opinion, Beast Wars, you lose that toyetic playability, if I can phrase that in. So the reality is, they didn't look like what they looked like in the cartoons. They're really super fragile and they're super expensive. That's a triumvirate of doom right there for a toy collector. So I tend to stay clear of them. That being said, I will probably get Galvatron G1, because there's something special about that ridiculous noise his gun made. I can't put my finger on it, but it touches me in a very dare way. I'm not sure.
It pierces the soul.
It does. It does. I'm not too sure why, especially since the other day I found out he had leg articulation, which was like, what? Because back in the day,
sit down, can't he?
Yeah, he can sit. Most of them usually.
That would be my action feature if I was a toy. I'd have sit down action feature.
Yeah, I'm an articulation whore. Like, I tend to go for anybody who can pose nicely and look good on a shelf. I'm very shallow that way. But I do say the die-cast construction especially on some of the older toys, that's class. That's some classy stuff, like the Masterpiece stuff with his metal construction as well. I like touching my toys and feeling that coldness. It's like, real metal. I mean, but
yeah, I always liked G1 Shockwave. Right, he had the metal legs and the trigger. I think on the gun when he was a combination of both. But that was a great toy, and that one was licensed out to so many places. I think Radio Shack even had a version of him. So there was like the mold. I guess there's just all over the place. So you'd see knockoffs or bootleg, whatever you want to call it. But you'd see other versions of them all over. But that'd be one that I'd be interested in getting.
But for maximum profit, right? It's only logical. I hope that landed. These are Transformers guys. That joke should have landed.
Yeah.
I just got back and I was catching up with the chat because I said my bladder would fail me at least twice on this stream, and that was number one. So, not that I have a specific quota or anything, but I did catch a bunch of that. The G1 stuff is fragile, but I think your mileage varies depending on the figure. Sometimes if you see that I haven't transformed a figure when I'm doing either a history video or a retrospective of some sort, sometimes I just don't need to for the theme of it. But there are times where I've tried to transform them and I know the joint has like frozen up a little. And I'm like, if I really, really had to transform this, I would take a dryer through it. I'd jimmy it. I'd wiggle it. And it'll usually at some point give, right? Without breaking. Now, have I broken some in the past? Yeah, in the very, very distant past. But so it's not a nice feeling. But there are times where I just go, okay, screw it. I got enough to do for this video without having to transform this as well. And sometimes it's just time, but sometimes it is fear. But sometimes if I need to get an alt mode, I might just take a picture from the Mark Belomo book or my Japanese guidebook. Because if you just need to see the alt mode for 3 seconds, I don't need to spend half an hour transforming something with frozen joints and everything. But it is scary. And I mean, I try to liken everything back to other people's collecting habits, like Motu, the leg bands, very fragile, right? But in recent times, people have found ways to replace that. And in the case of Motu, that's more or less the only thing that's really fragile consistently across every figure. So, but because there's a certain charm to the way vintage toys look, there's a certain passing grade we give them for having less articulation, simplistic look, goofiness. You can't really recapture that today because the standards have changed. So it's like everything's measured against the animation model now, or the art, because like we have artists in the fandom. I mean, some of you here do casual artwork as fans, so everyone kind of measures it against that. So I usually only tell people to get into G1 if they're already like collecting another vintage line and I know what vintage means to them, right? But like everyone's different, right? Like for me, vintage He-Man and Ninja Turtles, I don't collect those presently, but I do collect the modern ones, right? G.I. Joe, wrestling, and Transformers, I kind of do both vintage and modern. Mask, there only is vintage available, so I only do that. So I guess everything comes down to your established collecting hobby habits. Is usually what I tell people.
If I could get vintage, okay. So if you go out to a toy store and you see, for me, I'm just gonna use my example, vintage Skywalk for like $25, I would get him, sure. But that's not the cost. That's the problem. He's not $25. Might be $25 for his left wing right now, but it's rough on the good old fashioned wallet too.
You might get a reissue for a little bit more than that, but again, people's opinions tend to vary with reissues. A lot of people either want it for the box art, or because they're a casual collector and they just don't care about whether it's reissue or original. When I got back in, I was a student, so I was buying reissues left, right, and center. And since then, some have been replaced with G1 originals. But at the same time, if I got the reissue when I was like 20 or 21 years old, I still very much consider myself a kid at the time, even though technically I was an adult collecting toys. So I sometimes have a memory of how I found that reissue, and no G1 original will ever replace that.
Still kids right now. I mean, you know, technically, you know,
yeah.
You know, we just got taller and we moved the juice and put a bear, and that's kid.
Well, I haven't grown since I was 14, so you could say taller if you want. I just say wider, but you know, it depends on how much beer I've had that week. Yeah. As far as each of you gentlemen is concerned, like we got, you know, 4 personalities on screen here, a bunch of people in the live chat. For you personally as a collector, where does it start and end for you? Like, where do you draw your limits? Because there's such a vast array of characters and so many different styles and so many years and so many releases. Like, where's your starting blocks and where do you draw the line? Will, let's go back to you for a bit on this one.
Well, Ken, I'm chaos in collecting, and I admire people like you who are very organized and you know, thoughtful in your collecting. I am bouncing here and there and everywhere, just like a gummy bear. I'm all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason to what I do. If I like something, I get it, and I usually don't have enough room for it. So, you know, I have in the recent, you know, in times here, I have restrained myself. But yeah, I overindulge. I buy things. I think they're cool. I have great thoughts about what I'm going to do with them or how I'm going to display them, and then I never get around to it. It happens. So, you know, when I watch your channels, I really do admire your consistency. You know, your ability to stay organized and keep things on track. So that's about it for me, man. I'm like I said, I'm making toys. I'm buying, you know, things, just impulse buys. I got stuff I've had for 20 years. It's all good for me. And you know, that's just how I love the hobby. So, you know, it's not saying it's good. It's not great for everyone, but I do look towards you, people like you that are much more organized and you know, for guidance, for suggestions, and you know, something to aspire to.
Well, but I look at your 3D printed stuff and say, I just, you know, like, you're very direct in your passion on that. You want that 1/18th Ironhide, you get it, and you get it your own measured and artistic way, as opposed to just buying the available options on the shelf, rinse, repeat over again. So, you know, the admiration goes both ways on that one. Funny enough, Brick, something if I could get an off-site museum of sorts, I would try. I got a bit of the stink eye yesterday because I was trying to measure a space for another bookshelf over there, and it's like, don't you have enough? I'm like, no, but I'll just say yes for now.
Do you want to get in a fight? No, I do not. Get out. You know, this is. But I banned you from this room. Be gone.
I would sooner be the one getting banned than do the banning. Unfortunately, it's just the way life shakes out these days, or not these days, but all the time. Mark, what about you? Where does collecting start and end for you as far as Transformers are concerned?
Well, as far as ending, I quit Transformers every week. It feels like, you know, like it's actually. And when you told me about like the details of this topic we were discussing, I was going back actually watching a few of your Transformers videos, Ken, and I was looking at comments I made 5 months ago talking about I really going to quit Transformers because, you know, the prices are just getting too high. And I think I just say this like like every week, because every week I seem to end up like I only ordered the Studio Series 86 Ironhide the other day, so I clearly haven't quit Transformers. And yeah, I don't know. I'm always looking to jump off. I always think I have enough, and then something just grabs my attention and hurts my wallet, squeezes my wallet a little bit more. I'm a sucker for repaints as well. I love a good repaint of something I already own. So you can keep selling me that same toy over and over again, and I'll keep coming back. When it comes to Transformers, they definitely got me.
Whenever people complain about repaints on like any toy line, Marvel Legends, G.I. Joe Classified, whatever it is, I find myself initially saying, yep, I totally get it. They're just reusing that mold. And when I say get it, I mean, I understand what they're doing. I don't necessarily think, sometimes I feel like they're just squeezing us for more cash. And then I realized that the whole thing about repaints, they got us back in 1984. It wasn't like they got us just recently. And you know what I'm going to say here. Starscream, Thundercracker, Skywarp. They got us then. We just didn't know at the time because they were three unique characters with more or less three unique personalities and sets of skills and functions and all that. So repaints, they've been doing it that long. So I'm not giving Hasbro a pass by any means. I'm just, every time I find myself criticizing the repaint game, I look back on my shelves and I'm reminded that I've always been a sucker for them, just like you, Mark. Hans. Yeah.
My recent collection started with Siege. Everything before Siege to me, and this is a strong statement, but I stand by it, and I will dig my feet. Oh no, that's a lie. Oh no. I can't make that statement now. Hold on. Tick, tick, tick. Right. My collection started with Combiner Wars. But it started with one specific group, the Combaticons, because I like the cut of their jib. That's my favorite combiner. I find all the others are garbage, and I'll put my feet down on that. Ooh, Devastator. Ooh, I turn into bright green construction vehicles. My tank, my planes, my rocket ship, whatever. So I got that because they had the articulation. They had all that stuff. This is a lie too. I started with Generations, like much earlier. You see, and this is how the collecting thing goes, right? This is a prime example of how it is, right? It just kind of starts wherever it started. So I can't really say where it started because some of you are young, and some of you are quite old. I don't know where it started. And in 10 years, you're not going to know where it started either. So let's focus more at where it ends, right? I don't really think it ends per se, unless you're dead. At that point, everything ended. So that's not a fair statement to make for this. So I think it really doesn't end, it slows down. So I'll now move back to the original thing. The sarcasm is over. So Siege, I bought the whole line. Everything was sexy. Everything was gorgeous. All the robots and everything. Wonderful. Give it all. Here's my money. Just give it to me. But they didn't do RC properly, in my opinion, since generations. They haven't. They've issued 2 more RCs since then. No, not for me. She had them thick thighs back in the G1. I like that, so I kept that. That's the G1 I wanted. So for me, she's done. Until they release something better, she's done. And the same could be said for Optimus Prime. They released Siege, Optimus Prime. Do I own him? Yes, I did. But when there's the Earthstars one, I was like, pa goodbye. And that is the one. And then they released Laser Optimus Prime. I don't care. That one. So as far as I'm concerned, Optimus Prime is done there. And that's kind of where I draw my lines. When I've reached a definitive character, that character's timeline is over for me. And that is how I kind of move. I don't think it's fair to say, well, it's over now. Because it hasn't been over. And it won't be over. They'll keep making new toys that look nice. The production value will drop and the materials will drop and we'll all get mad and we'll throw rocks at the cats and whatever and write horrible things on the internet. But then we'll go back, we'll watch them. Yeah, pantomime the typing. And eventually they'll relaunch a new line and they would have learned and they'll apologize and they'll show up at the door with flowers and candy and a nice haircut. And they'll say, well, look, we've used new plastic quality now. And look, it's just like the one you grow. And we'll forgive them when we let them back in and we'll buy that one again until they hurt us again. And then we'll cry about it the same way and rinse and repeat. But the reality is, are we unhappy doing this? And I submit, and I'm in no sense of denial that I am not. I enjoy this abusive relationship. It's a wonderful thing to be in because it does make me happy 90% of the time, which is a good, healthy relationship. 10% suffering, 90% happy. So where does it start? It starts wherever it wants. Where does it end? It ends when you hit the character with a definitive version. Where does it really end? When you're in the ground.
So you're familiar with some of my toy series out there called, you've seen the evolution of toys that I've done before, where I talk about the vintage to modern. You've seen my expanding the range, and I'm kind of working on another one right now where I talk about like fan-made figures when they fill the gaps. I think a really great series would just be called Hans Chow on the Soapbox. And basically we go live like this. I go, hi, I'm Ken. Here's Hans. I click out, I walk away for an hour. I have a meal. I come back and say, and that was today's podcast, everybody.
If you do that, one day you'll come back and I'll be wearing war paints on my face with no shirt. What's up with that HasLab unicorn? And then you just end broadcast at that point,
I think what'll happen is I'll leave. I'll go for lunch or something. You'll be doing your on-screen rant, and I'll get an email from YouTube on my Google Gmail saying this stream was automatically demonetized due to and pulled down until you blurt out all the foul language on here. And I'm like, damn it, Hans, I left them for too long.
It got too existential, but I do think though that as sensible people, we do know where to draw certain lines. So I'll use Ken's example of Starscream, for example, Starscream Thundercracker Skywalk. Okay, I don't do the thing where I buy the repaints anymore because they're legacy characters. They're going to release a new one. You just have to wait. You just have to be patient, and that requires that kind of virtue that most senior toy collectors do in fact develop. So when Siege came out, they released the Cybertronian modes of all these things. I was like, well, I will get the Cybertronian Thundercracker. I will not get the other two. And I was very strict with myself with that because I knew they were going to launch the others. Just hold your breath. You won't have to hold it for very long. And then they launched the new one. And then sure enough, Earthrise had a Starscream. And I was like, well, that's delightful. But then there was an affordable Thundercracker. So, Skywarp. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to get the Skywarp because I know Starscream is coming again. Just wait. So I got the Skywarp Earth mode, put him down, sat down there and waited. And I waited and I waited. And then they launched a studio series, which was a repack of original with a chair and a cape and big shoulder pads. I was like, oh, well. Fancy meeting you here, darling. And I bought that one. So now I have all three. And then sure enough, they're doing it again. Next year, 2023, I'm going to get an Armada Starscream. And you know what? I'm going to buy that too. Because it's just waiting, man. Oh, they're never going to release an Optimus Prime like this again, said no one ever.
I will weigh in on that Optimus Prime exact thing and the Ultimate versions very shortly here. But first off, Jim Largo, channel member, thank you very much for the generous and kind super chat. He says here, what a great bunch of folks to hang out with today, and he needs some sage advice. We're here to give you that advice, but I just realized I haven't read that question yet. So you might be asking me for dating advice, and I wouldn't know what to tell you. But let's hope you're asking a toy question. I'm running out of shelf space, but I'd like to get at least one quintessential Transformer in my collection. What do you suggest? Whoo. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch tiger by that. Will, you answer this one first.
Jim, what you want to do is you want to go to Target. Jada Toys put out a lunchbox or even refrigerator-sized Optimus Prime that was self-transforming. I don't know if you guys saw him. His body, when he transforms, is about like 4 feet wide, and he's got this little tiny head and these little stubby arms. Perfect. Just get that.
Mark? What do you think? Bobahicks, what do you think of the what would be a quintessential piece?
I would probably, well, I like what Will suggested because I actually watched a video on that self-transforming one recently by Jada. It looked pretty cool. I would say, look, Optimus Prime is probably like the quintessential Transformer. So you're going to be looking at a version of Optimus Prime. So, you know, would you go for a bougie masterpiece Optimus Prime that kind of is like the quintessential, this is how he looks in the cartoon and he just looks perfect? Or maybe you could go for a slightly more affordable Art Rise or Kingdom version from the main line. Uh, but yeah, like so Optimus Prime for me would be like the quintessential Transformer. So that it's essentially then choosing which version of Prime do you want on your shelf, which I suppose depends on how much space you have as well. Now, like Goji says, Masterpiece Prime.
Mm. Hans?
It's sickening, but it's definitely some form of Optimus Prime. So the three that I have in my head, number one would be Earthrise or Kingdom version of Optimus Prime, because I think it's $54, and that's really super affordable, really nice to transform. It has all the bells and whistles that you'd want, and you don't have to break the bank doing it. Masterpiece Optimus Prime, the last one I can't remember it. MP10, I think it's MP10.
Well, there was MP10 was the one most people got. 44 was the revised MP44 was the revised version.
I can't remember which one was better. I don't know if it's MP10 or that one, but the one of those two. I'm not Captain Masterpiece, unfortunately, because I'm also not Captain Rich Man. So I can't. So they would be that one, or if you want to spend more time with your Transformers, you can go to Lego and you can buy that Lego Optimus Prime, and you can spend about a week building it, and it's wonderful for display. It's not very posable, but it's lovely for display. So those are my three options.
Fair enough. And like Hans said, I'm sorry, Will, did you want to add something to that? Or
Yeah, me will change my mind. Me agree with Gazz. Buy Grimlock.
I'm trying to find Gazz's comment right now, but I did find I did find Nolan's there. Oh, there we go. Gazz, only one Transformer, Grimlock. To what Hans said, I'm not Captain Masterpiece either, nor am I Captain Rich Man, but I can be Lieutenant Masterpiece guy and Lieutenant Middle Class guy. So when it comes to depending on which branch of the no, Lieutenant's always lower than Captain, even in the Navy, right? Yes, it is. Okay, all right. Was checking which branch of the military because depending on doesn't matter for this conversation. If you only want one. And this is actually a great question, and I'm glad Jim asked it because I was thinking about putting this as one of the panel questions, and I guess it now is. Man, the default answer really is Optimus, right? And if you just want one for shelf presence and size, that original MP01 from Christmas of 2003 is a good piece for that. Or you can, by extension, get the MP04 that released a year or two later that came with kind of a simplified version of the trailer. That one works too because it's 12 inches tall. The ones that Hans are talking about, the MP10 and the MP44. And if it's between the two, the MP44 looks a little bit better proportionally because some people complain the MP10's arms are just a little too long, but the MP44 also costs you like 2 to 3 times the value for what I don't think is 2 to 3 times a better figure. So I stopped at the MP10. But the key thing with the MP10 Optimus, it scales with the other Transformers Masterpiece figures. That's what it is meant for. And it is an ultimate version in many ways. But if you want a bigger version of the MP10 that is slightly simpler engineered, but we're talking just incrementally less complex engineered, I'd go with the MP01 because it's a bigger toy, especially if you have a Masterpiece Voltron that's 12 inches tall, or a Gundam that's 12 inches tall, or a Robotech that's that tall. That MP10 stands out a little bit more on your shelf. I don't even display mine right now because I'm trying to scale my masterpieces together. The Jada Toys one, the self-transforming, works. If you're like a Transformer / Robotech guy, I would say try to get a Jetfire though. Especially a G1 Jetfire that utilizes the original mold. And if you can get one in the box, even better. So again, your mileage will vary depending on how you collect. But I hope that answers your question, Jim, and excellent question for the panel around here.
Can I add in one more option in this?
Please.
It might be a bit of a controversial one. Knockoffs. There's a lot of good knockoff Transformers out there, and I was actually watching Will's video he released recently on those knockoff Constructicons he got, and I was actually very impressed with them. So it might be a bit controversial, but I'm just going to throw it out there. They are affordable, and You know, if you're just buying something for display and you're not worried about durability or stuff like that, I'm just putting it out there. Could be an option. I've no problem with it personally, you know. So
yeah, if you're just looking for something, a lot of times the knockoff is just as good as the original. I mean, my only issue with knockoffs is when they get sold as originals, whether by accident or not. That's really my only issue with it. Otherwise, I say collect how you collect. Sometimes if you just want the shelf presence, regardless of the value of the figure or the prestige, I'm using air quotes here. The reason why I have very, very limited knockoffs in my collections, when I started, there weren't knockoffs available. Right. So I just continued down the same trend. Right. Like that's a big reason why I got into G1. There was when I got back into toys at the end of 2002, start of 2003, there wasn't a modern line of Transformers. Right. Armada was kind of just wrapping up. And the G1 was like my only option. And then they were just starting the reissues around that time. So, yeah. So now, because we're talking about toys here, but what really makes the toys go is the media behind them. Is there people keep using the word quintessential, so I'll rephrase the question. Is there a quintessential piece of Transformers media that is your go-to? Regardless of whether, I mean, obviously we would recommend it to beginners anyway, but regardless of whether you recommend it to beginners or not, what's your number one piece of Transformers media, whether it's a comic, video game, movie, cartoon, whatever? Will, over to you, bud.
Transformers the movie. I mean, that's pretty much the peak of my Transformers experience. That's when the pinnacle. That was the top. You got the touch. I mean, I rocked that song, drove around, I had a mullet, and I was wearing a jean jacket, and that song was playing in my head all summer long. No, it really didn't happen that way. I'm joking, but some of the earlier episodes of the cartoon are, a little, I don't know. I tried to rewatch them. There's animation errors. There's some kind of, things that happen. So I wouldn't recommend that. You got the power. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think the movie's just a great way. Like, it's not for everyone. I actually watched a YouTube video where a young couple watched Transformers the movie for the first time, and they just didn't get it. They were overwhelmed. There was too many characters. They had no idea what was going on, and as a result, they didn't really like it. So, I would say I wouldn't recommend the animated series unless you love it and you like it. But there's other media out there too as well. Are you guys fans of the Cybertronic Spree? They're a cover band. Yep. They just like Transformers.
Yep.
I mean, that's really great Transformers, content that's being put out now. I think it's great, very creative. I love them. And Mega Ran is a rapper who just put a song out about Optimus Prime dying just 2 days ago. It's on YouTube as well. When all hell's breaking loose, you're right in the eye of the storm. Oh, yeah. And, You Got the Touch used to be my favorite song, but I think Dare has grown on me in recent years. I kind of like that one, too.
Well, they do play it twice during the movie, just like The Touch, right? Like, it's played at less key moments. Like, it's played, as you transition to another scene, as opposed to The Touch is played there is nothing in movie history for me that replicates the words Autobot cities being absolutely blitzkrieged, right? To the point that scene, Optimus has to dispatch the Dino. They haven't even landed. And he sees Devastator. He's like, Dinobots, destroy Devastator. I can't do Cullen's voice. But the fact he has to, there's a desperation there because he's like, I can't wait till we land. You have to take out Devastator now. Right. And that just buys him a short bit of time right before his, I don't know, the peak moment of Optimus's life.
Did Optimus ever do a kill command before that?
Never did. And then right after is Megatron must be stopped no matter the cost. And then the transformation with the song and how he just goes solo mission right through all the Decepticons. I will get to that in a minute, but before it's my turn to get on a slightly shorter soapbox than the one I normally put Hans on, because I'm just assuming he's taller than me, I want to hear Mark's thoughts on this.
Yeah, so for a definitive piece of media, yeah, I'd agree with Will, and I go with the 86 movie. Brilliant animation, great soundtrack, great voice cast. I'd also like to throw in there, and this is probably a bit region specific, but the UK run of Transformers G1 comics was really, really good, real meaty, weighty stories, written by Simon Furman, who would go on and do the US comics as well, which are also very good. But I love the UK G1 and G2 continuity is great, and it's a great piece of literature to pick up if you're getting into Transformers, or finding yourself again getting into the world of Transformers. Those G1 UK comics,
Yes.
they're absolutely brilliant. But as far as actual visual media on the screen, that 86 movie is just top tier. Excellent soundtrack. I actually have it's like recordings of Vince DiCola at BotCon doing kind of like demos and stuff of a load of the soundtrack. It's really, really cool. I love listening to it. Look at that Grimlock. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you mentioned Simon Furman there. I think Marcelo Mature, the artist, has done some work with Simon Furman before on IDW, and I did try to invite Marcelo to this stream because I do know him, and just because he lives here in Vancouver, not too far away. But hopefully, we'll get him on at some point, and he can tell us about some of his experience working with Simon Furman. Hans, I'll get you to both answer the question and show us your Grimlock here, your best piece of Transformers
Grimlock
media.
is king.
Grimlock King.
That's the best Grimlock out there, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise.
I will pull you up on solo layout before I put my opinion on that.
That is Planet X's Metallic Vulcan. If Jim Largo, if you are a fan of Grimlock more than any of the others, this is the best one you can get. He transforms into the War for Cybertron Grimlock. He is metallic. He's tough. I've dropped him several times, and he is handled like a pro. And he looks fantastic next to Haruka. Grimlock-san, so big. Anyway, with regards, sorry. With regards to Transformers media, I obviously agree with Mark and Will, but just to give you all a little bit more variation, you can also check out Transformers Prime. It's a nice melding of the classic style Transformers along with a bit more of the Bayverse stuff, while also kind of restoring the Transformers original aesthetic. And then it wonderfully continues into Transformers Robots in Disguise, where Bumblebee actually leads the team. So you get to see him grow as a character. So you have, on one side, you see Optimus Prime classically leading the team against Megatron. And then you get to see a whole new band of characters carrying out, a new style of mission. They're more or less police officers almost. They change the whole thing. But then the story gets really big. And I don't want to spoil anything. But let's just say Prime continuing into Robots in Disguise is also a fantastic series to watch if you're looking for some variation. And as well as if you're looking for something modern that isn't as dark as...
Are those the ones on Netflix? Those are the Netflix shows?
No, those are the ones that are on... I think they're on Hulu, or they were on Hulu at least.
They also were on Netflix here in Canada for a little while. I'm not sure if they stayed that way, but they may have taken them out. I didn't realize that the Transformers Prime series continued into RID. I didn't actually realize they were one out. Okay, so it's kind of like a Beast Wars, Beast Machine continuity. And is that Holler?
Yes.
Is that Holler?
Yeah, look at that face.
Oh!
Freaking love it. Freaking love it.
Yeah, I told you I was a sucker for repaints,
We have to add. There was one more thing I was supposed to add to that. Wait. Right.
the gears.
This is right. I like new characters. I like when they introduce new characters. Windblade was fantastic.
Yes.
Slipstream was fantastic. Granted, Slipstream is just a renaming.
Do you see Drift here? Do you see Drift here?
You're pointing a little more to. There you go. I see him there. Yeah.
Freaking StreamYard being backwards all the time.
Drift.
I'll try to pull it up on solo layout here, but if you look over my left shoulder, this is Drift right here.
Yeah.
Right. So
then they introduced Strong Arm, who was a fantastic female addition, and then they brought in, I can't remember his name. I was just watching his video the other day, Steeljaw, and they built him up in. He's an older character, but he was a cassette from Blaster. But then they built him up into Decepticon. They did a lot of new things, and if you're not
Bulkhead
as well. Oh yes,
Hot Shot.
All those new characters. So if you're fed up of Megatron and Optimus Prime butting heads constantly, Prime and Robots in Disguise really gives you more of the lesser known characters in the forefront, their personalities, and builds them up to be really quite lovable. And that will actually help you in your collecting because it helps you to expand beyond the well-known 64 characters. And I think that's very valuable because it is meeting new people. And even in the line they just announced, they have a Tarn going up. And of that entire line, the only one I want is Tarn. I have a million of the others.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's good to see the IDW universe get represented there.
Yeah.
If a person's already familiar with the Transformers franchise to some degree, I'll always tell them to watch the 1986 animated movie because the one thing that I was kind of getting to, but saved it for now, is that one of the things that makes Optimus so valued and so revered in our pop culture status is he has that absolutely peak moment where he fights Megatron to the death and saves Autobot City. With the touch playing in the background, gives away the Matrix as he's dying, and then he's taken away from us for the better part of a year. So that's partly what immortalizes him. Yes, in the moment, there was that write-in campaign, the complaint campaign, where he had died and all the parents went absolutely ballistic, and their kids were crying. But as an adult, that makes him more precious to us. We lost him. I remember losing Prime for a bit, and maybe even if you didn't watch in the original run, if you watch it in syndication a few years later on a rerun, you still experience losing Optimus for a little while, and there was a bit of a void because that didn't happen back then. He-Man didn't die, Duke was supposed to but didn't, Superman didn't die till the 90s, and Optimus's death may have been one of the catalysts or inspirations for that. You just didn't lose the main character, right? So I don't know. Yep. It's kind of how I feel about that. So at this point, I mean, that gets to the end of our agenda questions plus Jim's bonus super chatted question there. I'm just going to open the floor here to those of you if you want to kind of say something like, Will, I know you wanted to plug your friend's 3D printing business to start.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what? Let me just reach back here. I bought the 3D printer with the sole purpose of designing, 3D printing, and making my own 1/18 scale Optimus Prime with trailer that I could put G.I. Joe in. I mean, that was it. I think back in 2011, G.I. Joe did these like Comic-Con exclusives where it was like a Transformer versus G.I. Joe or Transformer and G.I. Joe crossover. And when I heard about those, I wasn't collecting at the time. But that would have got me right back in. I was thrilled. Then I found out they were just repaints. So it was just like the G.I. Joe vehicle painted to look like Starscream. And I was like, oh, man. I was like, someone should do something about that. And then I looked in the mirror and I was like, hey, you're someone. You should do something about that. And then I did. So I originally started, I totally dismantled my G1 Ultra Magnus, which is the same figure as Optimus Prime. I took every single part and I measured it and took pictures of it next to a ruler, brought it into Photoshop, printed them out, and made patterns scaling them up. So I was just taking that G1 model and scaling it up, and I was cutting it out of foam core and kind of stacking the pieces together and putting it together, trying to make a mock-up of a 1/18 scale Optimus Prime. Then I found out about 3D printing, and I was like, okay, yeah, this idea is taking forever, and I could do a lot, a lot easier and a lot better. I will say that I'm a procrastinator too, so it's been 2 years since I've had the 3D printer, and the most I've come up with was this. But yeah, this was just searching online. I found this guy, Toy Maker 3D. It's TOYMAKR 3D. He's got a YouTube channel. He's on Instagram. He's got a Patreon. If you join it, it's like $1 a month. You get the 3D files. He made these. These are just based on the G1 models as they appeared in the cartoon series. They're not transforming. And he makes them to scale with each other, kind of as they did in the cartoon series. Now, Cliffjumper and Ironhide were two of my favorite characters. So that's what I started with. And I went 225% of what he recommends you print them at because I wanted. So if that was the windshield, I just figured gung ho, hanging out there. That's about 1/18 scale. If that was the front of a van, I'm just guessing. I don't know. But the articulation suffers at this scale. It's really hard to get the joints to stay. They stay very well at the lower scales. And he's updated his model since then where he has like screws you could tighten them and make them a lot better. But yeah, if you check out his thing, this 3D printer cost me $100. The 3D filament's like $20 a roll, and a roll goes a long way. So, you could print these things out. It's just very time consuming, and there is just a little bit of a learning curve to get into it, but anyone can do it. So my goal is to make a 1/18 scale transforming Optimus Prime with trailer for my G.I. Joes, other vehicles to follow. Hasbro has come out with the crossover figures with the His Tank and the Baroness, and also Bumblebee as an Ostriker. They're doing it, but they're not doing it like, I don't know, great. I'd say, I bought them, obviously, because I'm obsessed with G.I. Joe and Transformers. But I would say, there is also another guy out there, Mark II Designs. He does work. He made a 1/18 scale non-transforming Optimus Prime, which I saw at Joe Fest, and like my heart sunk when I saw it because I was like, I wanted to make that, but I'm actually happy he made it, because if someone else makes it and I can just print it, that'd be great too. I'm not trying to, make it for production or anything. I just want it for myself. So I bought that, and he also makes that for classified scale as well. So you could get a 1/12 scale Optimus Prime non-transforming. And he sells the 3D model. I think I bought it for $10. I haven't printed it yet. It's like a 24-hour print just for the cap. So I haven't printed it yet, but I will be doing that soon. But yeah, if you are interested in 3D printing, or if you, check him out. Toymaker 3D. The guy's brilliant. I love his work.
Okay. Awesome. If you want to put his name in the because I think if you send it off like, oh, you know what? See if put it in the chat if you want, and we'll see if YouTube auto deletes it because sometimes they do. And if they do, put it in the private chat here, and I'll copy and paste it on. Yeah, sorry. So you said you were at Joe Fest this year. Will you be going in 2023?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This will be my 3rd year, so I hope to see some of you guys there. Were you there last year? Were you there last year?
No, but you're gonna see me next year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's gonna be great.
Yeah.
You can gaze and amaze at the size and the sheer strength.
As it stands, I'm planning to go there with Delta 17 as one of the reps for their brand, but I don't know how committed we are. I know we got the booth, but depending how much stuff we have, it's like mostly a go. Like it is, but anyway. I'll have more to say about that as we get closer to Joe Fest, but I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. Most likely I'll be there. Let's put it that way. Most likely. I know,
That's
Hans.
like when a girl tells you maybe when you ask them to go out. That's like, I'll tell you no later. You have to commit, Ken. You got to whip it out, throw it on the table, because I'm going to be there, and I want to see you there. You know what I mean? I can't hug boxes. Can't hug laptops. Got to hug you,
Yeah, Han's gonna make it really awkward. He's gonna like sweep me off the floor, spin me around as he hugs me. Like his speaking of girlfriends, it's like, people will be like, "Oh, is that Han's girlfriend?" Oh no, it's just Ken. Anyway,
It's
everyone carry on with their day. So
with Rolf, you have to bring Rolf. I'll hug both of you.
we'll see if he makes the trip. I know if he doesn't, there's gonna be a lot of, "Hey, where's Ralph? Where's Ralph?" But do you know when you're meeting people for the first time and you're walking around with a Muppet on your hand, it's just a little bit. Well, actually, no. We are at a toy show, so I was gonna say it's awkward, but maybe it isn't. So
I'll wear my furry costume if it makes you feel better.
You'll wear the okay. All right, that will make me feel.
I won't care about Rolf at that point. It'll be a full dude, like a pink wolf costume, and I'll be terrible when I run up and go, "Ken!" and I hug you in my furry coat. Then it gets weird. You can just put your hand down and hug Rolf by himself.
All right. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Sorry, I'm just copying and pasting Will's link here for his buddy's 3D printing business there. It's a bit of an extended link, but it's there. Whoa. I don't know why it showed up 3 times, but whatever.
You're going to come too, right, man? It's right there. You can just drive half an hour and it's right there, right?
Oh, yeah, just half an hour from Ireland. Yeah, no problem.
Half an hour to the airport, maybe.
Half an hour.
Yeah, if it's lucky, yeah.
Okay, right.
The Irish are a hardy bunch. You swim across.
I don't think I'm big enough a Joe fan to warrant Joe Fest.
Yeah, but you see, that hurt my feelings. Now that means you're not a fan of me. You're not a fan of Will. You're not a fan of Ken because it's not about the toys. It's about the community.
This is true. I'm a bad person.
I'm probably a bad person for guilting you too. So we can lime together in the bad person bucket.
Now, if you say TF Con, maybe Mark will show up.
Maybe.
Is there a TF Con?
There is one, I think, in Chicago every year. There might be still one in LA. And then I know there's one in Toronto on the other side of the country from me, which I've been meaning to go to, but can never get myself out there ever, somehow, some way. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we've been going for about 75 minutes here. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add to this particular thought program that we're on?
Well, I would
hard
just
question.
Like to say, if you are thinking about getting into Transformers, it's probably a good time if you're with all the modern lines that are out at the moment. Like we said, that the prices are going up, but they are still relatively affordable. So, if we're thinking about doing it and you haven't done it, maybe now is the time to jump on the bandwagon. And if I can help and advise anybody in any way, if they care, you just can reach out to me. And if you want any tips or anything, or any point in any good directions of good sellers or anything like that, yeah, let me know. I'd be happy to help anybody who's thinking of getting in on the game.
Okay, no, that's totally fair, and you're absolutely right there. And if you're trying to get in now, the hardest thing is trying to understand what the lines are. But if you're lucky enough and you see a figure you like, and you let's say you buy it at a toy show or something, and you show it online, and they go, "Oh, that's Earthrise Optimus." Well, then you landed right in the most common line most people are collecting today, anyway. So, oh man, yeah. Go ahead.
And don't let it be a burden.
Yeah.
Don't let it be a financial burden. Oh, and this is even more important, an emotional burden. Because some people get very emotional about these things. And they are, in essence, just action figures and toys and such. Just relax. You know what I mean? You don't have to own all of them. You don't even have to own any of them. If you want to live vicariously through, Bobahicks or Will or Ken and Toy Connections, go there, watch the videos and enjoy those sorts of things. Watch the cartoons, they're there. Enjoy all the media. You needn't have it on your shelf there because trust me, I am guilty of this. Sometimes I'll buy a figure and it ends up on the thing and it's just collecting dust. So get things that you will enjoy.
Right. And what I tried to do when I first got back in is get every character that appeared in the North American cartoon. That's what I started with G1. And of course, with RC, you got to get a third party one. I started the same thing with the Masterpiece line, but that's really, really daunting. So with the Masterpiece line, I think I cut myself off at the 86 movie. plus a few odds and ends. Like if I like a character like Octane, who didn't appear till after the movie, or Six Shot, I might go do that. But they didn't have the option of War for Cybertron, Legacy, and Studio 86 during the time when I was doing Masterpiece and G1. But that's why I branched off into 3 different lines. That's why I have G1, Masterpiece, and like modern figures from the recent era. But if you're coming in at a time where you only want one of those lines, at least you have that option, right? You didn't get trapped into some sort of a weird rabbit hole like I did, where you're kind of collecting 3 Transformers lines somewhat simultaneously, but a little bit staggered because I started at different times. And you don't kind of feel like this weird obligation that, okay, well, I've got almost all the mini bots. I just need, Beachcomber, or I just need Huffer. It allows it to be a little bit more free flowing for you rather than constrictive. Like when people say I'm organized, part of it, there is a small amount of like obligation buying. Like, oh, I almost have the set, right? I almost have all the first 18 Autobots in the first season of the Transformers, and I just need one more Masterpiece, and it's only another 125 American or whatever, right? It's just, you get into that mindset, and I can't recommend that for other people, which is why I brought this stream up. And of course, I'm just making up that number. Back then it was a little bit cheaper, inflation wasn't as high, so my dollar stretched a little bit further. I don't know, just my candid thoughts on that regard. There we go. Obligation buying, that's the Filipino part, right? We love our obligations, right? So wow, excellent discussion piece today,
some
folks.
good looking dudes, y'all know that?
Meh. The camera takes 10 pounds away from me, so.
Oh man, y'all some good looking dudes. This was a good talk. I'm always happy to talk to good looking dudes, and I bet nobody tell y'all good looking. I'm telling y'all look good looking people right now.
So you prefer not talking?
My wife, who said that.
So you're prejudiced against ugly dudes. So I'll just see whoever.
I will say it right now. I never met an ugly dude in my whole life. Never met an ugly woman. Never met an ugly man. Never.
Okay.
When they open their mouth, it changes, right?
Okay.
But y'all ain't saying nothing ugly today, so y'all still handsome to me.
Okay. Fair enough. It's what on the inside that counts, I suppose. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up over here? It's not quite lunchtime where I am, so I got a few minutes if y'all want to throw some, hit some knowledge or hit some experience or share a screen or something out there. Just
I want to say that it's a great time to be a collector, because there's wonderful people out there like you and you and you and you and you and all of you in chat. This community is amazing. So if you're looking to get into collecting, now's a great time, because almost all of these people also can talk about toys all day. So all you got to do is hit someone up, ask a question, and you're gonna find your answer. So that's all I've got to say. I'm grateful for the community and each and every one of you. And like I said, I don't think there's ever been a better time than now to be a collector.
For sure. And I know that I got wrapped up into like how to coin the era that we're in. And I know I once said, I think we're in something of a golden age. And both Zazel from Slaughterhouse and Adam from Go Figure said, nah, the golden age was in our youth. And I'm like, that's true, because when I started looking up the actual definition of a golden age, and you may have seen me talk about this on videos before, it's a time of like peacefulness, no conflict. You can say prosperity. I think that was more toy aisle prosperity than it was individual person prosperity. But mind you, figures were $2.99 back in the day. So you felt prosperous if you could buy more than one. So I think they're right that era that we grew up in, from Star Wars to about the 90s and the pre-grunge era, would be something of a golden age, which of course encapsulates the 80s. But we looked at 3D printed stuff here. We talked a bit about third party. I would say that we're in a renaissance period right now, an era of thinking, an era of evolved evolution. I keep using that term, evolution of toys. I don't know why, I'm just obsessed with that term, but we're in that higher thinking level And we sort of demand artistry perfection now. So I kind of feel this is a Renaissance era, or just simplify it to the plastic age, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Right. Don't overthink it like Ken. Just do it that way. But if anyone else has any final thoughts, speak now, or I won't say forever.
Can I just give a quick shout out, because I saw him in the chat and I've been loving his comments coming up on screen. Bob Squad,
Yes.
if you like G.I. Joe, if you like Transformers, if you just like fun, go to the Bob Squad channel, watch his fun boxings, watch his Son Bob adventures. They are top notch.
Absolutely. And just saying hello to a few folks who jumped in a bit late here, like Happy Accident. And yeah, absolutely. You know, golden age of tech, but the golden age, the older days, was the real golden age. That's kind of how I'm reading that comment. Yeah, this was fun, folks, and you're all welcome on again at some point. And I'm getting used to seeing Will and Bobahicks here on camera rather than in the comments, but they're equally as fun, and in fact more fun on camera, because we can get your sort of like your inflections and your vibe and feeling by being on camera rather than just being in the comments. And Hans, you know me, you've got an open checkbook with me all the time. But I think at this point in time we've covered our topics and interacted with the chat, and I think it'd be a good time to I don't want to say cut it off here, but say until next time. I do have a Motu stream planned for next week. I'm just getting the topic together, so definitely tune in for that. I'm going to try to do it at the same time of week. I used to do this on Saturday or Sunday, but lately my son has had a class he takes on Saturday, so I got to free that up and do this on a Sunday. Unless I have a toy show on a Sunday, then I'll maybe do this on a Saturday again. But hopefully the time has worked out for those of you folks. I know I always say this, that those who are on certain parts of the world, it's the wee hours of the morning, like it's 1 or 2 in the morning for some people right now. So I do feel a bit bad for those individuals. But for those of you like in Ireland right now, Bobahicks, it's the peak hours for the day for you. Hans and Will, I think you're close to lunchtime, if not a little bit past lunchtime. I'm getting kind of towards the late brunch time myself. So I think it's a good time to be on, and I don't see a lot of people on at this hour. So I'm happy to be there. But anyway, hey, thank you. Check out Wilhelm Toy and Hobby YouTube channel. Check out Bobahicks' photography on Instagram. Check out Hans Chow's art on Instagram. The links are in the description below. And with that, I will bid you peace and farewell, and I will see you again soon.
Till all are one.
Till all are one. And ba weep, grana weep, ninny bong. Okay, that's a good way to end right now. Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone in the chat. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving in Canada. Okay, we're really gone this time. Take care.